So let's talk about your 9/11 challenge, Mike.
The 9/11 challenge, yeah.
To your opponents.
Yeah, well, I haven't issued that to my opponents yet. I guess I'll do it right on this recording, but about 2.5 years ago, I've been investigating on my own not all the events of 9/11, but rather the destruction of the 3 towers on 9/11. And I came to the conclusion, after a lot of investigation, and it was a disheartening conclusion, didn't make me feel very good, and it was a conclusion I did not want to reach. But I came to the conclusion, like a lot of scientists and physicists and engineers have, that those 3 towers that went down on 9/11 did not go down as a result only of the aircraft impact and resultant fire. They went down as a result of not only aircraft impact and resultant fire, but primarily because of explosive demolition. And I don't have any doubt about that now, and I believe if I could ever get a fair case tried, we could win that case. But so I started telling friends, I started telling my attorney friends actually, and people that I'd worked with and who knew me, and I was really surprised to find that they didn't want to talk about it, they didn't want to hear it, and they would be just as soon happy if I didn't mention anything about it. So I think people are frightened about the whole matter of how 9/11 happened and how these buildings came down. So what I did was, I thought, well, if people don't want to talk about it, why don't I just offer them money? I'll pay them to look at it. If they won't consider it because they're an interested citizen, I will pay them money. So I started offering financial awards or rewards for reviewing the evidence of the destruction of these 3 towers on 9/11. And I had a whole bunch of different ones. I had, I think, 3 different websites. I only now have one website today where I make that offer, and that's MikeShoenForCongress.com. But at one point, I had full-page ads in the Arizona State University State Press. I had display ads in the Arizona State University State Press newspaper. And I put together 2 symposiums at ASU on this very subject. And what I did is I said, any class at ASU, I'll give you guys $10,000. If you just look at, I think it was 5 hours of DVD evidence. And then you sign an affidavit, a piece of paper here that says, I looked at the evidence, and it's these DVDs, and I conclude that the towers came down not as Mike Shoen says they did with explosive demolition, but rather they came down through aircraft impact and resultant fire. So I was willing to pay people $10,000 to disagree with me. And I wasn't requiring that their disagreement met with my approval. It just had to meet with their approval. I couldn't get anybody to do that. They're so scared. Now, beyond that, I had another challenge which I publicized in different ways to a variety of different people. Some of this was through direct letters. I've sent out signed checks for $41,000 to 41 different individuals in the last 2.5 years. These are checks that are signed, and I had money in the bank. And what I told them was essentially what I told these classes at ASU, that look, I sent them the DVDs. I said, here's 5 hours, 6 hours, whatever it was, of DVDs. You look at these. Then you sign an affidavit, and they have the check. You sign an affidavit, John Smith. I looked at these DVDs, and you know what, Mike, you're wrong. These buildings didn't come down through explosive demolition. They came down just like the government says, and like the media says, they came down through aircraft impact and resultant fire. But nobody would do it. No, some of the people sent me the checks back. Some of them sent the DVDs back. So everybody's afraid of this. I can't pay people to disagree with me because I'm asking them to look at the evidence. They don't want to look at the evidence. I had one guy who was 2 years younger than me, a combat medic in Vietnam. And I was out at ASU, and he came up to me and he started being very, very verbally aggressive towards me. And I was real nice to him. And after about a half hour, out of exasperation, he said to me, and he was a very smart man, he said, you know, we all know who brought those buildings down. But you're just wasting your time trying to get people to understand it. So he was agreeing with me. I had a product liability plaintiff attorney. I can't remember if he called me or wrote me. And he said, don't worry, Mike, your money's safe. He was a pretty smart guy. He did review the evidence. And I had another guy who is not only a degreed engineer, but a gentleman who wrote a book on engineering that is famous worldwide in the English language. About a year ago, I was invited to attend a dinner in his honor in Phoenix for $200 a plate. And he also had some rather substantial achievements in his engineering life that I cannot mention here because I would give away his identity to some people. But he was very successful as an engineer, and he wrote me a letter in pencil that he signed saying that, yeah, these buildings came down through explosive demolition. That's after he looked at the evidence. And I'm also an associate member of an organization of 1,300 degreed and licensed engineers and architects that have come to this same conclusion. So
what's the website?
That's called AE911truth.org. That's AE911truth.org. And they're the most professional group. There's some other pretty good groups out there. But so my attitude has not been to argue with people. You don't get anywhere arguing with people. My attitude has been to say, I'm so confident about my position that I'll pay you money. And I'll write you a check right now.
So do you have a challenge for your opponents or anybody who's
the same challenge exists for I want to make this challenge right now for my two opponents, for John Hulburd, but most importantly to Ben Quayle. Because Ben is the guy who in his literature has twice said he doesn't really want to spend any resources bringing the mastermind, what he calls the masterminds of 9/11 to trial in this country. That's what Ben Quayle, an attorney, is put in his literature. I'm not making this up. Go look at Ben Quayle's literature. It's unbelievable. So my challenge to Ben Quayle and my challenge to John Hulburd, and also incidentally, this challenge, I'll open it up too, I'll also make to Ben Quayle's dad, to Dan Quayle. My challenge is this: I'll give each one of you $2,400, which is the maximum I can give as a political donation to your campaign. I'll give that to Ben and I'll give that to John. I'll write them a check right as soon as they call me up. And I'll give $2,400 to Ben's dad, Dan. And all I want him to do is look at 10 hours of evidence. It's on DVDs about these buildings coming down. And then all they have to do to get the money is take the little affidavit and say, I looked at this stuff. I looked at all this evidence, and by golly, Mike, you're wrong. So I just cash in your check, and you just lost that money. But it's not going to happen because they know what that, I believe, they've got a good idea what that evidence is going to show.
So what does that work out to per hour if they watch your DVDs?
10 hours, so they'd be making $240 an hour. That's good money. It's not bad money. So Ben, it'd be a nice education for you, and you might learn something, and you might get on my side. Twice repeated campaign statement that you really don't approve of efforts to bring the masterminds of 9/11 to trial in the United States. Why then don't look at the evidence and don't take the money, but don't tell me I'm wrong.
So that challenge is on Mike Shoen for Congress.com?
Yes, it is. It's on a page. It's have a whole page for itself. It's called 9/11 Nonsense. But I want to make the challenge to my two political opponents right now. They ought to get with it. A explosive political issue, but it's one if you're a patriot and you care about this country, you ought to be involved in. You ought to understand. And you ought to investigate it. And if I'm paying you to investigate it, it should be pretty easy.